are we up, Tammy? We're good. Okay. Now we move on to number 7, which is new business. I'll let Ryan take over the ones that are particular to him.
Nutrition quotes. We had a visit in the Ireton kitchen, and I don't know if you've ever been over there. We repurposed when we did the remodeling the counter spaces. They have come in and done inspections, and now the consistent piece that they want to see in school lunch prep areas are stainless steel work tables. So in order to replace the current table space provided, we would actually have stainless steel work tables. And there are 2 quotes, one from Martin Brothers and one from H Refrigeration. The piece there also, they have been currently using residential freezers. What we'd like to do is actually purchase a reach-in commercial freezer. Also 2 quotes were provided with that, one from Martin Brothers and Ace Refrigeration. For the total from Ace Refrigeration of $5,324 and Martin Brothers for a total of $6,568.99. The funds would be withdrawn from the nutrition fund and can support that expenditure. I would recommend that we go with the lowest bid from Ace Refrigeration. Yeah, that's the account. It has listed the project as Akron Westfield Schools, but because we do have a shared director, that is the difference there. But it is for the purpose of West Sioux.
Any questions in regards to this, to A? We'll do the same thing. We'll go through and then we'll go, but we'll do each one separately. Okay. You want to go on to B?
Yeah. We have early retirement requests from Mr. Hansen, Ms. Tehan, and Mrs. Brunstein. They have served West Sioux, and I recommend that we accept those requests, regretfully accept those requests. They have done a wonderful job for West Sioux, and they will sorely be missed in the time and the work that they have done.
Okay. Any questions in regards to B? Moving on to C.
If you remember, back in August, TSP provided us with a presentation of a long-range plan for the West Sioux School District in regards to facilities. Then I contacted another group through actually a whole different process going through the Iowa School Board Association, and came to CMBA, which is an architect firm out of Sioux City, and explained what we kind of wanted them to take a look at and some of the things that we'd like to do. TSP, if you remember, really talked specifically about the generation of a plan based on an analysis of multiple different factors, from enrollment to different needs maintenance-wise, to facility inspections, and then also through numerous community meetings to kind of generate that long-term plan. CMBA also offers those same types of services. The difference is definitely within the proposal. CMBA, I think, would do a wonderful job if we had a specific project in mind. Through my work with them and interview, I think if we had an idea of what exactly we wanted in a facility, I think that they could fulfill our needs very well. What I am kind of looking for in this formation of a 10-year plan is really a community groundswelling of what we need, because I truly you know, there's multiple ideas that are continuously out there, but I want to hear from as many constituents as we possibly can. And I also want to look at a forward plan, not just specifically if we need things or if we have this grandiose idea, but setting it up so we have an idea of these things are our priorities, these things have to be done for safety or mechanical reasons, or these things can be done later when we see fit or based on the interest. TSP does have a higher project cost. This would be covered under the PEPAL silo funds. I do believe that they might provide us, at least with my goal of presenting that 10-year plan in a more succinct way and utilizing more of the community members and staff members to generate a plan than I believe CMBA. Again, I had a great meeting with CMBA. I think very highly of them and their work that they could provide for us. But I think their goal ultimately as a company isn't centered around long-term planning and more on the short-term planning piece. If you remember, I believe it's been at least 8-9 years ago, we had FEH do a longer-term plan for us as they came in. FEH did 2 projects for us, and in those projects, there were multiple challenges that we faced, not necessarily due to the long-term planning, but just kind of working through that process. They were definitely a strong architect firm that helped us out when we were there. When we did that process, it was apparent, at least to me, that it was more centered around architectural renderings and needs behind design, not necessarily things that were community driven and did fulfill our needs, but there wasn't the long-term planning access. It seemed almost on a short-term basis, where I believe TSP would be more centered around our long-term goal of what we have as a district, even though it would be a higher upfront cost. But if either decision was made, I definitely wouldn't hesitate with working with either program or company, excuse me.
So does CMBA and TSP turn into the architectural contracts then?
They can, yes. Yes. I think you are presented with the option, if you would so choose, to not utilize them, but I believe there is actually within their project costs the proposal to do architectural renderings at the term of, or the end of that planning, if so needed, based on that project.
And over and above the stated monies that they have here.
Yes.
And would their recommendations be broader than just building recommendations, new construction?
That is what I'm anticipating, exactly. Exactly that, beyond long-term planning, what efficiency pieces, how we can be more efficient on some things, those type of ideas is what I anticipate, and has been explained to me.
This is action item this evening. So if we have questions, you know, now is the time to ask them. We'll have another opportunity again before we take motions on individual items.
To be clear, though, your recommendation is TSP.
That is correct.
And they modified their quote to the $22,950.
That is correct, Larry. And they are the higher quote, yes.
Any questions? To explain, perhaps I had to ask the question, I didn't completely understand the difference, why we went down in price was, at the time, when we talked to him the last time, there was talk about redoing the bond. That's up in 2018, correct?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
And we're no longer well, at this time, we're not looking at doing that, so they lowered it.
I stated that it would, when it was first discussed with Mr. Collins, who was first on board with TSP, one of the reasons for taking a strong look at TSP early on was the idea that the bond was set to expire, and so that was discussed pretty heavily. Is there something that we need? We're getting to the point now, two reasons. I don't know necessarily if there's an immediate need. We'll generate that through community meetings to determine that, but in my explanation, the timeline was definitely further than what was going to be anticipated in trying to quickly replace a bond. This is be something in a long-term process. Thank you for bringing that up, Gary.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, if they come up, we'll have another opportunity. Now we're moving on to D. Mr. Kramer, go ahead with that, please.
I have some data for us to take a look at. Substitute information to kind of, we talked last month in detail about the substitutes. To give you an indication, I went back 4 years and took a look at what these are unfilled absences. The definition of unfilled means that we did not hire a substitute to go into that classroom either for the half day, full day, or certain periods. Now what happens in many cases are a certified teacher is either asked to go in their classroom during their planning, or in the elementary case, unfortunately we end up pulling teachers from different what we call pull-out programs themselves to fulfill the need in the classrooms, or the administrators regularly go within the classrooms to cover for substitutes. So the average in 2013, 2014 was 6.83 days were unfilled. Now we've moved up into 16, 17, and where that average has dramatically increased, almost 3 times what it was just 4 years ago, to 18. And a pretty big increase from just last year. Now this is only taking into effect 5 months, so that may even out to go lower. It may not, but it's definitely something to take a look at, because as you compare to the previous year, definitely November and December of this year were significantly higher. Now December was due a little bit to, we had a week-long professional development that a number of our teachers took. We are having that same professional development in the summer, but because some of our coaches who needed to take this course coached during the summer, it was not available to them, and so they had to take it in December. And so that kind of explains a little bit of our increased numbers in December. Because actually, as I was figuring this when we were talking about TLC and the mentoring program, if you remember last year and previous years, our mentors and mentees had to attend the AEA mentor training. Now this took out teachers and required subs for approximately, if we were to do it this year, would be 68 days. So the TLC, by having the mentors in place and in our system, actually, and the program built through TLC, has decreased the use of 68 days of subs. So that's pretty fortunate for us. You can go on to the next slide. Number of different individual subs used. Back in 2011, 2012, we had 29 subs on our list. Currently this year we have 19. Of course, this could be possibly increasing as the year progresses. We did have another recent addition who graduated from college at the semester and was able to get their certification and is doing some sub jobs. And I believe he started last week, and he got his first day that he didn't have to sub was today. So in that whole time. If you can scroll down to the next. This is the range of days subs are used. This is an interesting one, and I look at it as an interesting piece because of the top number. In 2011, 2012, the sub that worked the most had 60 days. If we go to 13, 14, 15, we had substitutes working 103 days and 104 days. Now last year that went down to about 91. And this year, of course, isn't an accurate description of where we'll end because we're only just over halfway through. Then the next one is the total days a sub was used and the average days subs were used. So currently, halfway through the year, we were at 262 days. If we use that as a halfway point, we, like Mr. Cook had kind of seen through his data that he looks at on a monthly basis, we'll have a significant reduction. And I think that's multiple fold. I think we'll take another look at the end of the year as we've really addressed the personal days as paying for those. I think that's reduced our number. And I think, again, by having the TLC program, we've reduced significantly the professional development days that we've used. And so I think that will assist us as we try to reduce those number of days that we require subs. If you kind of scroll down, this will kind of go to my narrative, one of my recommendations. As we kind of, we did survey also our substitutes, and I know there's been a number of discussions over how we address the substitute issue. And I know a lot of discussion around monetary amounts, whether that's a motivating factor or not a motivating factor in retaining and attracting substitutes. One of the ideas is to, after 20 days, increase the pay to $120 per day. This graph illustrates the cost in previous years of what something like that would cost, and the range is about $5,000 to $7,000. Currently, we would have 5 subs that would be over the 20 days, and we would have to pay them accordingly, but we'll talk about that as my recommendation kind of continues at the end. And the last one was our cost per sub. This directly is affected by the number of days, and as I stated, has gone down significantly from the previous years. So if we stay on the same trajectory, we'll probably increase slightly. We'll still have a pretty big reduction in the number of days that we had substitutes. So if you go down to the narrative, I have 2 recommendations. My recommendation is that after 20 days of subbing in a school year, the sub would receive an additional $20 per day. The estimated cost for the remainder of the school year would be $3,200. This is something I know Tammy and I have talked extensively about, or not extensively, but had conversations, and really I don't know per se if increasing the pay will increase the number of subs we have. We have each of us have our theories on what type of effect that will make. I think the important factor that we take a look at, and we have this opportunity as we're looking at it, it is a $3,200 cost, most likely if we go on averages. This would give us, if we were to do this till the end of the school year, at least an indication if a pay increase would affect the number of substitutes we have. Now, certainly we can say that, you know, in our theories and as we kind of have our experiences, that throwing money at something might not make a difference. I don't know. I really don't. I wish I could tell you for sure if it would or would not. But I think we do definitely need to do something different. I think to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results, I think is not the way to attack this issue. I think we can control the cost. I think we can address the problem, and then especially take a look at it to determine, you know what, it had no effect. We may be out $3,200, but we know we're not going to continue this. Or we take a look at it in June and say, wow, we really had an increase in the number of teachers that exceeded their 20 days and really helped us out and addressed a problem of having substitutes in the classroom. So that's one idea. The other idea that does, again, deal with cost, but also addresses the piece that we talked about in getting more subs on our list. The other recommendation is that we encourage district residents to become certified to substitute by offering to pay for half of the application and class fees so we can increase our sub pool from within the district. The estimated cost of this for the licensure is $125. We would pay $62.50. The authorization is $85. We would pay $42.50, and the background check is $37.50. Total cost of that is $75. What I would recommend is that we cap that amount that we would spend on this proposal to 10 individuals, or what would equate in dollars would be $1,425. Again, to restate, I think we need to reevaluate this change in June to determine if either one of these proposals made any difference to whether we determine that they need to be continued for the next year. But again, I think we do need to take a strong look at doing something different than what we've currently been doing, because I think we can say that it has affected a lot of the things we do based on the numbers of just total subs. They've been reduced. Whether an increase in salary will make a difference, that's unknown to me. I think we kind of all have our own theories, but these are just proposals. So if any other ideas should be further checked into, this is kind of what we came to. Questions?
In the previous times, the 20 days were consecutive days, and you're not talking that anymore.
I'm not, no. Akron Westfield, actually, this is the kind of the idea that struck me. Akron Westfield currently has that in place.
We
Not
did?
the consecutive. We have the consecutive
That's right,
days.
we have that in
But that
place.
actually has to be for one specific job, as if I were substituting just for
That-
you.
that I
Even if I were to substitute 20 days in a row, but it was different, that wouldn't fall necessarily under the policy for consecutive days. It had to be for the same person. And the reason for that is because we do have that substitute then designing lesson plans on a long-term substitute piece.
Don't we have long-term subs and they get the same $100, or do they get more?
They get more. They actually, after the 20 days, they get the per diem amount. Yes, it's actually the per diem amount.
Yeah, that's after 20 consecutive days in the same classroom
Correct, yeah, for a long-term sub.
for long-term sub, okay.
Yep. Exactly. Other questions?
And your proposal would begin immediately, so subs who already have 20 days serviced, after their 20 days, on their next day, their 21st day, they start getting an additional $20.
That is correct. And then I work with Tammy this week to get a ad in the paper as soon as possible in regards to paying for and laying out what they'd have to do to get their certification.
And those classes are available throughout the year, or
Through
just
the
certain
AEA,
times?
and I believe the next course takes place. Okay. Yep.
Could you explain the question that you asked, Ryan, previously about the 20th and when it would start?
Well, of course, we already have,
Reaching back?
well, from the beginning of the school year, if we already have subs that have exceeded the 20 days, then if we would approve this, they would start getting
The increase.
the increase. We probably, I'm guessing, you're not planning to go back and
No.
credit
If anyone
subs
has,
before
right.
the policy is approved.
So if I am a substitute and I'm already on my 23rd day, and I am scheduled to substitute tomorrow for my 24th, it is not my intention to go to pay extra for day 21, day 22, or day 23. I would start the increased payment on day 24 for them. That's a good question.
And so why do we want to go clear back to the first of the school year and not start at this point in time? Why do we want to do that? We already have them for 20 days. We've already paid them for the 20 days. Now we're going to start 20 days.
That is an option.
That's an option, okay.
In previous, I think the meeting before or something, didn't we talk about how competitive we were with other districts?
Yes.
And we found out, other than a few, we are or we aren't.
No, I'd say actually on our base pay, we are pretty comparable.
Okay.
Akron Westfield currently uses the increased rate of 20 days, and I think they have, well, no, they've used that for at least 5 or 6 years for sure, that I'm aware of. I do know that if you remember back in, was it October? I shared the article from the school in Nebraska that increased their daily rate significantly to try to stem this. And then also at my superintendent's legislative forum, there was actually a lot of discussion in regards to how TLC has affected our shortage of subs statewide. Because of the number of districts that hired a large percentage of students, the colleges and universities weren't able to keep up with having new and available teachers, and so therefore many teachers within the field already have permanent jobs and are not looking to sub.
Any questions? Okay. Now we'll move on to E, under roof bids.
I'm going to have Mr. Brewington kind of go over those since he's been patiently waiting. And he's my roofing expert. He's helped us tremendously, and I know Cal from H&D continually tells us how lucky we are to have Mr. Brewington and how a lot of things. And I think based on the number of bids we have, it's saved us again.
Back in April of last year, we did another assessments of our roofs and made some allocations for money to put aside for these different sections. And there's one section that we're going to be doing this, hopefully this next summer. We had $146,000 we put aside for, and as our bids came in, as you have in front of you, the low bid came in $22,000 less, which is fantastic. And one of the things is because of we do start our bidding process early in the year, and that really helps us quite a bit. The people who did get the bid, the architectural, roofing, and steel metal people out of Sioux Falls, they and Guarantee are probably two of the biggest companies and roofing companies in Sioux Falls, and they are very reputable. I myself have worked with Guarantee and Winkler and JMP and through other roofing projects through some other districts, and all of them are very good roofing companies. But yes, our roofers came in, our contractors came in the first of the month, looked at our roof and did their assessments, and our bids came in the following week. We gave them a week to get all that in. So this is the ones or the architecture or roofing and sheet metal company is the one we're recommending, and hopefully we can get this by and get another section. And it happens to be the north section of roofing off of the auditorium and the gym, and we are having some leak problems along that wall, and that's why we are choosing this section for this year.
That's what I was hoping you were going to bring up. Ironically enough, just last night we had a tile fall because of saturation over that entry, right outside of that gym entry by the going into that hallway. It leaks right on that wall, and what's great is when I first got the text message, I thought it was between the middle school and high school when they were explaining it, and I was thinking to myself, we just replaced that roof just this last year, and that had been a place where we've had so many problems, but now there were no problems, and so it was a great project last year to get completed. This is the next one that really needs to be completed because that continues to be a real problem along those higher walls and coming into a lower section of roof. So
Right, this will take care of the west part of the auditorium wall and the north part of the auditorium and gym wall, and then also the no, we did the rest of it this last year then, so that's where we're at.
the funding for this will be out of Pepple Silo and was in the proposal. Bob, I think Mr. Cook has a question for you.
I do. You're considering unit price 1 and unit price 2. What,
Those are, if we have wet insulation, those are prices for replacement.
and that, they're higher than the rest of them?
They are, but last year we had that same thing, and we probably spent on our roof project last year, which was a little larger, about $3,000, because we ran into some wet insulation and product of that sort. And so it's a replacement.
Okay.
So it really doesn't add much more into the cost.
Okay.
So now does this project take us all the way to the north over the shops and everything, or?
Takes us over one shop area. This is our roof that we put in many, many years ago. It's layered roof of tar, which was one of the best roofs available at that time. And then we're taking care of all the roof areas that had that, but for on top of the auditorium and on top of the gym. And we have never had any problems with those sections for some reason. They just have not leaked. They've just done a great job. So that's why we're doing this one, because of leaks.
But this will be the same stuff
That we have
put
put
on
in,
last
right,
year?
right, that we put on the other roofs, right, yes.
Thank you, Bob.
Anything-
Thanks, Bob.
Yes.
So it's your recommendation to go with ARS?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Any questions on the roof bids? Like I said, we'll go back and start out at the beginning. This time we'll have a motion and a vote on each individual one, so that way we have that recorded. Start out with nutrition quotes. There's 2 in your packet, and it's recommended by Mr. Kramer and by Shar, our nutrition director, that we go with Ace Refrigeration. Is there any questions or comments? I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, we approve the Ace Refrigeration bid.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Gregg, seconded by Mr. Sellers. Any questions or comments before we vote? If not, all those in favor of accepting the Ace Refrigeration bid for, how much is that? 5,800?
Was it 400?
$5,324.49.
Okay, did you get that, Tammy? Okay. Indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Moving on to B, under early retirement requests, we have 3 included in the pack. Any questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
So move.
Is there a second?
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Cook, seconded by Mr. Coons. Any comments or questions regarding the vote? If not, all those in favor of accepting the 3 early retirement requests that are included in our packet indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Moving on to C, which is our long-range facility plan. There's 2 options included in the packet. The TSP plan, which is at 22,950,
950.
is recommended by Mr. Kramer. And the other one was $14,900.
900?
I'd entertain a motion in regards to this.
Motion to approve the recommendation from Mr. Kramer for TSP at $22,950.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Mr. Sellers, seconded by Mr. Gregg. Any questions or comments regarding the vote? If not, all those in favor of accepting the bid from TSP for $22,000, could we say that again?
950.
$950, indicate by, from TSP, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Moving on to D, which is the substitute recommendations. We have that from Mr. Kramer, includes 2 different items. One is for starting it at 20 days, increasing it to $120 after that. And the other one is to subsidize 50% of the cost of obtaining the certification that people within our district needs, at a cost no more than 10 people for $1,425, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
And also, I think we need to list in there that this would not be an evergreen contract. It would end and be viewed upon in June for the next school year. Is that right?
That's exactly right.
Any questions before we take the, before I entertain a motion?
Yeah, I got one question. Have you been able to reach out to some subs that we used to have who no longer come here and just pick their brains at all?
Many of them are still on our list. There actually were varying through our survey that we currently have on why they don't sub more. We have some that have moved outside of the area, which is one of the big ones. Actually moved outside because of either later retirement. The other ones were that they usually work with their husbands typically on the farm, and so it varies on their need. One of the things that was identified too, and it's a struggle, is the fact that they may sign up to work and they may not be needed that day because professional development was either canceled and those type of things. And so it's very difficult, which I completely and totally agree with. That makes it very difficult as a sub. Some other ideas that were kind of unique that we'll continue kind of take a look at. One was even to offer access to our weight room facility for substitutes. To try to entice more to sign up for that. So there are some shared ideas through that survey. I want to continue to talk to our individual subs and figure out, being that it's been widespread, a lot of it has come down to there's not as many teachers in the profession looking for substitute jobs as there once were, and how do you attract as many as possible because that pool has diminished, and so how do you get to be the best pool in the neighborhood, really, is kind of what we're trying to figure out. No, it's great.
$20 increase is enough, coming from those folks saying,
Right.
yeah, I could probably maybe, I didn't know if that.
As they all indicated, as I asked that question on the survey, all of them were, it would either highly motivate me, or it was about 50-50, highly motivate me or somewhat motivate me. And this was one of the other was the question on raising it on a daily basis from $100 to $110. So both of those factors, when it dealt with motivation on the survey, said that it would motivate them to have a dollar amount, but I think all of us can agree that if asked as an employee and my employer was asking the question, would it help to motivate you if I paid you more? Absolutely, it sure would. So I don't know.
One question I have about this all is, as every year we go through negotiations with the association, and generally that bases how we hand out the rest. And since I've been on here, I don't think we've ever gone far enough into cost of living or what we are trying to do with the rest of the people for our substitutes. So, and not to hash this thing over to death, competitively, we know that we're fairly close. I mean, there's always going to be somebody that's higher or does something different. So, I mean, that is something that we need to consider. It's an expense. I understand that. I think also what we got is we got a lot of retiring teachers that are younger, and their husbands retire at the same time, and they don't really think about going back to work when their husbands, because they've probably developed some plans. When something happens to one of the spouses, then it seems like they're less mobile and they have less need to move around, and then we start, and I think that's just the way. time is, or the
Mr.
times.
Cook and I talked about it. It's a very stressful position too. That it is for former teachers, I think especially. You think back to your own times within the classroom and how well you were able to feel confident in your preparedness and the things that you were doing when you had the option to plan and prepare. And when you take a look at going into somebody else's classroom, and it might not, sometimes too often because of a teacher, you don't know which sub might be in there, so you kind of generate your plans based on the unknown. And that creates either a really exciting day, like Mr. Cook talked about, getting the opportunity to actually teach, or it can result in a day where it wasn't as exciting and you have to more or less monitor a study hall because you're monitoring them through a movie because the teacher didn't know if your background was in mathematics, science, or anything. So it is a challenging job.
I read an article actually just this morning, and it was a more urban area, but there's a company that actually helps business people get a sub license. So then on the days that they go into the classroom to sub for teachers, it's not the teachers' plans that they follow, but rather they discuss like their career, and they kind of bring that wealth into the classroom. So it's a little bit more engaging. Plus you get the confidence factor of the individual because they know what their job is. And they were talking about the benefits of that. And that, it's kind of interesting. But on the flip side, how many people do we have in a profession that could just up and leave necessarily, on any given point when we need them? Because we probably need more subs on a call-by-call basis versus a planned. We have some of those, but. So that was kind of an interesting, way for them to utilize subs.
What kind of support is given to the sub when they enter the building? Is it
Like in the classroom for discipline, for getting to the classroom, what's you?
I'm just wondering if we actually, not wine them and dine them, but get them going, come in, tell them how nice they are, what's going on, take them down there, open the door, talk about what class is, what they're going to do, and then check up on them maybe a couple hours later to see how they're doing, so they feel like they're part of the situation instead of just in some strange place dodging the bullets or whatever are out there. Because if you walk in with the name of a sub, generally, not a lot's going to go on.
One question I do have that the administration can answer is that I don't understand is, for instance, you could sub 30 days in a row and you could actually be in 5 different classes within that, and they could be this class this day, this class this day, and this class next day, and correct, right? Different grades and everything. That is not common in temp jobs. You look at temp agencies or temp jobs, that's not common. Usually those people are hired for that specific type, and maybe teaching is that specific, but not. Okay. One of the things that I wasn't prepared for, and I'll be honest with you, was going back and accepting the 20 days that they already have had. I didn't think about that. And I don't know if I'm ready for that. And the reason why I look at that is because if you look at the days that's needed, we're coming up to a time when generally we have a high need of people again. So they'll get their 20 days if they. Do you follow me? I'm trying to incentivize them. And I think if they get it and reach back, if we reach back and start them, the incentive to get us through that spot might not be there. And also, I don't think it'll give us a clear picture of what we want to see in June.
We could probably, and something that might level that off, and 20 was just used based on an entire school year basis. So what we could do as an option is cut that down to after 10 days, starting now. That still allows us to have the motivation factor of 15. It could be any number. It could be 20. It could be counting at that point whatever we feel would be the motivating factor, because I hadn't really thought about either the option of not counting those last two, because I was looking at it as perspective of the whole school year, but I can see exactly what you're talking
June,
about.
If we're gonna get a really good feel about what it's like in June, if we take the reach back part of it, and we're losing some of the incentive of what our study is for. It's nothing to do with saving of money.
No, I
per se.
know what you mean.
But that's just me. I'm just bringing this up before we go into this, because if this is a project study, we got to make sure that we can really draw good out of it. Because in June, the costs, I mean, if we're accomplishing, the costs are not so big if we're accomplishing our goals, correct? I mean, an empty classroom or a non-productive classroom is no good for West Sioux.
To me, this is more than just a study to see if it'll work. It is trying to put a patch on a problem. We want our subs and the subs that have already subbed for us over 20 days to continue to come. I think they'll be incentivized to come even if we start it now, and we want to reward those subs especially that are with us that long. I strongly feel like we should start it now and give those subs the credit for the days that they've already served this year, rather than have them now go out and try to, put in more days in order to get that incentive. That might work, it might not work, but we've got a problem now that we want to solve and keep those subs coming.
Okay.
If they already have their 20 days in, they've been pretty aggressive in coming. They'll stay with it. I'm convinced they would. I think they'd stay.
We've had well, to put that in numbers perspective, out of our 19 currently, we've had 5 that have gone over 20. So yeah. No, that's.
And that would mean that they're willing to sub.
Oh yes,
They want the days. And so I'm sort of with Gary on that.
Well, I don't know where I'm sitting exactly on that. It's just that's a thought I had earlier in the day, and that's what I assumed it was going to start at that, not reach back. And so that kind of so I wanted to talk about it. But I understand what you're saying, Mr. Gregg, and I understand what you're saying, Mr. Cook, and along with the administration, because it's frustrating to be an administrator and having to jockey some things around. I understand that. But any other comments, questions? Because we're to the point where I'd entertain a motion.
And I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendations for subs as presented from Mr. Kramer and make that effective immediately as he proposed.
Okay, do you have anything in your motion for the education, subsidizing the education?
Yeah, that's also part of my motion.
Okay.
It's both recommendations that.
And to specify that you would include then counting the 20 days previous from today as going towards
Reaching back.
how do I not reaching back, because reaching when I think for you it makes sense, but for me when I look at reaching back I'm paying for it. But yeah,
Credit for time served.
yeah. Credit for time served. There you go. That's what you were anticipating, right, Mr. Rick?
Right, we're not paying anything extra for sub days that have already been served, only going forward. But we are giving them credit for the number of days that they have served this school year.
Credit. I love that.
Okay.
I like it. That's great.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. There's been a motion made by Mr. Gregg, seconded by Mr. Sellers, to follow Mr. Kramer's recommendation on substitutes in basically 2 items. The first item is after 20 days, it raises to $20 to $120 or increases $20, and they are given credit for the 20 days that they for the days that they actually have in at this time. And the second part of this motion included the subsidization of education to $1,425 as of representation of 10 teachers. And I guess the next thing I want to add before we do that is, and we all know that it's going to be reevaluated in June, okay? Okay, now any questions or comments before we take the vote? If not, all those in favor of the motion in front of us indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Aye. Motion carried. Moving on to E, under roof bids. We have a comparison list. Mr. Brewington is recommending we take the lowest bid with confidence, and also supported by Mr. Kramer from ARS Incorporated. They are from Sioux Falls, correct? For the dollar amount of $124,715. Is there any, I'd entertain a motion.
I make that motion, accept that bid.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Coons, seconded by Mr. Gregg. Any comments or questions about the vote before we go? If not, all those in favor accepting the bid from ARS Inc. for $124,715, excuse me, I don't say that right, but anyway, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same? Motion carried. I would entertain, if there's nothing else, I'd entertain an adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Sellers, seconded by Mr. Cook. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Adjournment. The next regular board meeting is scheduled for March 20, same,
That's the third Monday night, not the second Monday night. So this is different than what our typical months.
Is there a reason for that?
I'm switching it up if you want me in attendance, you know.
Well, you don't want me to come?
so it will
All
be
right.
here. It will be here at 6:30 on March the 20th, which is the third Monday night of that month. So now we're going into an exempt session on the purpose of discussing negotiations.
I won't be here.
Won't be here. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. We've had meetings where only three dudes were here. That ain't enough.
Trust me, my boss won't
Well,
allow me to come to this and not go to that.
you know,